Thank you, Dave, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar. As Dave has already told you, my name is John Tisdale. I am the Executive Director of Test Development Operations here at ASE. I was involved in the development, as Dave already said, I was involved in the development of the new ASE Light Duty Hybrid Electric Vehicle Specialist L3 test, so I'm really excited to share some information with everyone here tonight to hopefully help you prepare for this new certification. Just to start off, I want to give you an outline of what we're going to cover tonight. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of how the L3 test was developed, just to kind of give you some background of how we developed the content for the test. Going to give you an overview of the test content, which is primarily a good meat of this presentation, and I'm sure what everybody's here to see is, what's it all about and what do I need to know in order to be successful in earning this certification. I'll also talk about the deployment of this new test. It's out there readily available for registration. We'll talk more about that in detail and how to prepare for this test. So those will be kind of the high points that I'll hit tonight with tonight's content. So before I get into the details, I want to give you some background on how ASE developed the content for this new certification. We had a real diverse group of subject matter experts, which I'll refer to as SMEs, and they were assembled during many test development workshops. These are meetings where we bring these technical folks together to help us generate our test content. We had OEM participation from General Motors, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, Ford, and Chrysler throughout our meetings. The groups are also balanced out with subject matter experts from both independent and dealership shops. All of these SMEs were highly experienced hybrid vehicle specialists, and many of them had extensive experience working on different brands of hybrid vehicles. It's really the diversity of this knowledge and experience that helped ensure that the technology from the majority of the hybrid vehicle market was represented during our program development, which is really paramount to us covering as much hybrid vehicle technology as possible. As a program plan, we determined that early on in our workshops that since the various manufacturers' hybrid platforms differ, if we used a hybrid composite vehicle, it would likely have to take the shape of hybrid technology from a single manufacturer. Obviously the one out there who's got the majority of the hybrid vehicles on the street. So one of the initial challenges we overcame in the workshops was finding a way to develop an advanced level test that would encompass generic hybrid vehicle technology without the use of a composite vehicle, like we use in the L1 and L2 advanced level tests. It was the service and repair industry's goal, working with ASE, to offer a test that would benefit all hybrid technicians regardless of their vehicle specialty. So how did we accomplish that? Well, in order to maintain a generic continuity between the various hybrid manufacturers' vehicle types, our subject matter experts focused on the inclusion of prevalent technology that makes hybrid electric vehicles the same, which they concluded are the high voltage and other supporting systems. So our subject matter experts collectively concluded that the system voltages across the manufacturers can vary, but the principles of their application and the diagnostic and safety procedures are essentially similar. So using this as the defining criteria, skills necessary for competent job performance were the basis for the creation and refinement of the task list, which we'll talk more about in detail here in just a little bit, as well as all of our other test program development activities. It's important to note that the technical content that included in this test will cover multiple manufacturers' hybrid vehicle platforms. I'm going to stress that a few times tonight. We're covering multiple manufacturers' hybrid electric vehicle platforms. So as a result of this, technicians who have only worked on hybrid vehicles produced by a single manufacturer, you'll need to study up on hybrid technology used by other manufacturers. And we're going to talk about who those other manufacturers are in just a little bit in more detail, so stay tuned. There's a precedent for this need, though, for technicians to familiarize themselves with various manufacturer technologies and other ASE certification tests. So we expect many technicians will have to get a little bit out of their comfort zone and study up on unfamiliar technology if they want to be successful in passing the test and earning the ASE Light Duty Hybrid Electric Vehicle Specialist Advanced Level credential. So that's about all I want to get into as far as the test development activities. So let's talk more about test content, which I'm sure why everybody's here. The generic test concept presented many challenges as a result of differences in manufacturer technology and terminology. As a solution to this, we created a document that we call the Certification Test Reference to serve as a tool to help us overcome these challenges. And we're going to talk more about this document here in detail here in just a little bit. I want you to understand up front, though, in the document we established an outline of the technology common to all of the hybrid electric vehicles that would be covered in this test. We then developed definitions for all the vehicle platforms and included block diagrams that depict each of the major hybrid electric vehicle systems that will be considered in the test content for this test. We also included a glossary of terms, and that's to serve as a reference, and it includes terms used in the test that may not be consistent between various manufacturers. The certification test reference document is going to be available as a pop-up reference document during the test. Okay, it's going to be a button, it's going to pop up, it's going to be a pop-up PDF. So let's take a look at this certification test reference document, and I'll introduce you to the parts of it that really will make some sense to you about how this is going to be a tool for you to understand the constructs of this test. Now up here in the top we show that the certification test reference document has 3 pages, 1 of 3, and it's really broken down into 3 parts. On page 1 here, what you see, the information on this page establishes the common technical constructs for the hybrid drive systems included in this test. During question writing, our subject matter experts use these definitions to ensure that test content remains consistent and is understandable to technicians regardless of their area of hybrid vehicle specialty. Let's look at some of these definitions, okay? You'll see these bullets down here outline these definitions. One of the definitions states that all motor generators, MGs as acronymed, are high voltage 3-phase AC electric motor generators. Let's read another one. I'm not going to read through all of them, but I'm going to point a few key ones out. Each system uses a DC-DC converter. This converter supplies step-down voltage to the vehicle's 12-volt system and replaces the traditional generator, or alternator to a lot of us. Okay? There's a couple of things I really want to point out that are key, because based on differences in hybrid technology, we had to come up with some standards that we are going to use in terms of depicting certain things in the test that are different across a few manufacturers. For example, manufacturers show a hybrid system failure many different ways. Some have a light, some have a warning message. There's a myriad of different ways that the manufacturers present this to the vehicle operator. So what we came up with was a generic way to depict that there's a failure. And so what we state is failures affecting the vehicle's electric drive system may result in the display of a quote-unquote hybrid system warning on the instrument panel. Okay, so anything that turns on your light or sends up a message that there's a problem in the drive system, in the ASE test, that's going to be depicted as a hybrid system warning on the instrument panel. Okay. Another standard that we realized during during development was the fact that the terms encoder and resolver sometimes are used interchangeably because of the terminology among manufacturers. So we wanted to state that up front, that they're going to be used, resolver and encoder may be used interchangeably when you see those in a test question. Another great example of one of the challenges we faced, and I'm going to scroll down here so you can take a look at this table. This is a real good example of something that we faced that should have been fairly simple, but it wasn't so simple. The term ready or ready on is used differently by various manufacturers to identify the vehicle's operational power mode that's determined by for lack of a better way to characterize it, the key position. Okay, key on, engine off, key on, engine running. So what we had to do was put a matrix and develop a standard to clarify this disparity so that technicians taking the ASE test could understand what operational power mode the vehicle's in when we're making certain diagnoses of vehicles' problems in the test questions. So what you see here, the terms that we're going to use in the ASE test: off, okay, in this table, off is off. All systems are off, and the engine and electric drive system are powered off, okay? Accessory is the same as an accessory in a conventional vehicle. Now, power on, that's kind of equivalent to key on, engine off, okay? And in this mode, the engine will not run, nor will the vehicle move under electric power. So, you know, our ready or ready on is ready to drive, okay? And that's how we're going to characterize the vehicle is in ready to drive mode, and that's equivalent to key on, engine running. Of course, in this mode, the vehicle is ready to drive. Either the engine is running or it's off and ready to run if so commanded. Also, the electric drive system is also ready if a drive command is given, okay? So, you know, this is a really great example to illustrate how something as simple as the key position really wasn't so simple, but, you know, the collective genius of all the good folks that helped us with test development helped us to find a really good solution to overcome this challenge. So this is one of the main reasons why it's really important for everyone considering taking this test to get really familiar, you know, with the information in this certification test reference document, so that all it really is a reference when you come in and take the test. You can pop it open and say, oh yeah, what was that I read about, you know, the ready to drive mode, if you see that in a test question. So this will be available to you, you know, during the test. Now, on page 2, and again, like I said, this document's 3 pages, and it's basically broken down in 3 parts. The second part of this are the block diagrams. Now, these block diagrams serve as a visual reference and identify a classification for each of the vehicle platforms based on their technical characteristics. Now, these classifications will be used in some of the test questions to define the hybrid vehicle type in the diagnostic or repair scenario, and that allows us to do that without calling out the name of the actual vehicle manufacturer. Now, technicians familiar with the hybrid technology should recognize the systems represented, okay? So if you were to read through the type 1 and look at this block diagram, you know, you'd realize very quickly that, oh, hey, that could, you know, that could apply to Toyota or Ford or, you know, even Nissan Altima, okay? The idea is to give you a way to determine exactly what, you know, what is a type 1 vehicle when ASE talks about it. Now, one of the important things that I want everyone to understand is these block diagrams are in no way intended to offer you enough technical information about their operational characteristics in order to help you to answer test questions. Kind of like the composite vehicle reference booklet does for anyone that's taken the L1 or L2 test. These block diagrams are simply identify the technical aspects for a given type of hybrid vehicle so you can understand which type of hybrid vehicle is represented if we cite a type of vehicle in a given test question, okay? With this understanding of what each type represents, you will then be able to apply your knowledge of that vehicle type. What you already possess in your head and your understanding, having worked on them or studied them, you'll be able to apply your knowledge of that vehicle type to a test question that isolates any one of the 3 types we show in the certification test reference. Now, I know I just said a mouthful, but I hope that came across as clear as I hope. But again, so, you know, reading through type 1, I'm just going to kind of give you a quick overview. You know, type 1 applies to Toyota, Ford, Nissan Altima, if you're familiar with those types. If you read through type 2 and look at the configuration, you'll see that's really you know, an IMA-style Honda, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and even Nissan is starting to use IMA as well. And then when you look at and read through the Type 3, you'll see that really what we're referring to is the Chevy Volt. Okay, you know, that type of a hybrid configuration. Now, what I want you to understand though is you will see mostly generic test questions. Okay. You'll see the majority of the questions will be generic on the test, meaning that the content will apply to most any type of hybrid vehicle. However, there will be some test questions, and there'll be a sprinkling of them that will only apply to one of these single types, which will be indicated in the test question. So you've taken ASE test questions, you would understand a scenario that I'm going to use right now. We'd create a test question that would read something like, the technician is diagnosing a motor generator failure on a Type 2 hybrid electric vehicle. Okay? So we've identified a scenario, a diagnostic scenario that's specific to a Type 2 vehicle. So that would require you to apply your knowledge of type 2 to that diagnostic scenario and arrive at a conclusion based on your overall knowledge of that type of a diagnosis on a type 2. There will also be questions that also reference an illustration that's going to be provided with the test question that you'll use to diagnose the scenario of that test question, just like you've seen in other ASE tests. These illustrations will be, hybrid scenarios, okay, but they'll help you to level the playing field for all the technicians taking the L3 test, using that illustration coupled with your knowledge of the subject matter as your resource to solve the problem in the test question and arrive at an answer, which is really your diagnosis, right? So that's how that's going to work. But again, the majority of the test questions will be generic, meaning they're going to apply to most any type of hybrid vehicle, with just a sprinkling of the ones that apply just to type 1, type 2, type 3. The last part of the certification test reference document is a glossary of terms, okay? Now, the glossary of terms can be used as a reference during testing in the event you encounter a term in a test question that you don't clearly understand, primarily due to differences in how the term is used by various manufacturers. Now, we compiled the terms in this glossary during our test question development, which really was the best place to do it on the fly, because that's where we could best determine which terms should be included in this document that technicians globally might struggle with. So to help level the playing field for technicians taking this test, again, like I said, the certification test reference document will be available as a pop-up document in the computer-based testing user interface. It's also included in the official ASE L3 study guide, which I'll show you a little later and tell you how you can get your hands on one of them. Okay, now for test question content, I'll say, we had great success in writing generic questions that apply to the majority of manufacturers' hybrid vehicles. As I said, our subject matter experts, they concluded, high voltage is high voltage, and whether it's 156 volts or 300 volts, it's all dangerous. The diagnostic and safety procedures are essentially similar for all manufacturers. So as I already said, there'll be some type-specific questions included in the test, but the predominance of the questions will be generic. Just remember that all of the questions in the test require the application of a high level of diagnosis and analysis skills, as should be the case for any advanced level test. So that's just a little bit about the constructs of the test questions. Now, let's take a look at the task list, and I want to go through this and give you some really good insight how to use this task list to help you with your test preparation efforts. If you look at this first page, you'll see that this is what we call the test specification, and anyone that's taken an ASE test out there knows that this kind of mimics your score report, okay? With the test specification, we break the test down into general what we call content areas, okay, which identify a specific area of that test that has skills associated with it in diagnosis and repair, and we'll talk about those skills in a minute. In this test, you'll see that we've broken this test down into 5 content areas. We have the battery system, the internal combustion engine, drive systems, power electronics, and hybrid supporting systems. Now, when this test goes fully operational, there's going to be 45 questions which are distributed across these content areas in this manner. 11 of the questions go to battery systems, 6 of the questions will be into internal combustion engine, 9 drivetrain, 13 power electronics, and 6 hybrid supporting systems. Now, isn't it ironic that when we focused on prevalent technology that makes hybrids the same, the 2 content areas that most affect that are the areas where we're going to apply the most questions. Just kind of makes sense that way. It's important to note, though, the 45 questions applies to this test when it goes fully operational. Right now, we're offering the test in a pilot phase. Now, the pilot test is being delivered from January 1st. We started offering this test, and it'll run through June. And it's going to include 95 questions. There's going to be 3.5 hours of testing time allowed for the completion of the pilot test and the 95 questions. Now what I want you to understand right now, we're going to talk a little bit more about that in detail in just a moment, but I want you to understand the information that's in a task list and how this information can help you to better prepare yourself. Now, what are tasks? Okay, when you look at each content area, battery systems, within that content area we have 10 tasks. Now one of the things you're going to notice with many of the content areas, primarily the ones that deal with the high voltage system, all but the internal combustion engine content area, you're going to see the first 5 tasks are essentially the same. Okay, these are really the safety tasks that apply to each area where you're working on high voltage. Also, one of the common tasks is diagnostic trouble codes, because we could write a question about retrieving and diagnosing a diagnostic trouble code as it relates to the battery system, which would be different from retrieving and diagnosing a diagnostic trouble code as it relates to the internal combustion engine. Okay, so when you see repetition of the task, there's a method to the madness here, that each task really reflects the content that's going to be in that content area. So you need to get your head wrapped around the idea that, okay, there's multiple tasks, but what does that mean to this content area as it relates to battery systems? And most importantly, how much do I know about that? Okay, that's the key. How much do I know about that? Because if your self-evaluation says, wow, I don't know much about testing and diagnosing and repairing high voltage leaks or loss of isolation, you've just identified a place where you probably need to brush up your skill set and get some experience. Okay, so the battery system, again, those 5 common tasks. Now as we go through, we have tasks associated with the internal combustion engine. I want to point out just a couple of these. Again, as I had mentioned, retrieving and diagnosing diagnostic trouble codes as it relates to the internal combustion engine, going to be specific to the ASE. There's a few questions, a few tasks in here that you can go through and figure out whether you have a strength of knowledge in those areas. Cranking compression test, checking, keeping the internal combustion engine running during service, diagnosing internal combustion engine no crank conditions. One of the things I wanted to point out, interpret vacuum and compression readings on Atkinson cycle engines. Okay, wow, what does that mean? Well, vacuum and compression readings on Atkinson cycle engines is different, and if you didn't know that, I just pointed out something that you probably want to brush up on, because you might see a question about that in a test. Again, so now moving on to drive systems. Again, the first 3 tasks in that task list are essentially similar to the battery system. We've got one task down here that reads diagnose motor rotor position sensor, resolver, encoder. That's that interchangeability of terminology that we talked about already. Okay, and I wanted to point that out, how it might apply in a diagnostic scenario for a question that we might give you. Okay, so but you'll see there's tasks covering all of the diagnosis and repair scenarios and skills that we as technicians should know and understand when working on the drive system. Again, power electronics. Again, we've got the first 5 tasks there are essentially similar. This is one of the skills I wanted to point out, because this is where we get into that operational power mode that we talked about. Now, of course, we could be using the operational power modes in other content areas where we're talking about we're diagnosing a problem that occurred in the power on mode, okay, or the ready to drive mode. But this is an actual skill that reflects back to that table that I showed you in the certification test reference document, and how it applies to the skills in the task list that the questions in the test are going to relate to. Couple other tasks just to point out here, just as a flavoring, diagnose AC/DC inverter failure, okay, and we talked about that in the precepts of the certification test reference document. So again, how that parallels to the content of the test. Down here, diagnose failed DC-DC converter. So the idea here, and then the last but not least, the hybrid supporting systems. You want to again, we've got the same 5 initial tasks, but then there's a few tasks here that I wanted to point out to you as well. Task 9, we're talking about removing and installing high voltage air conditioning compressor, identifying and selecting proper system oil. If you don't know why proper system oil is so important to a hybrid vehicle, there's something else you want to study up on and learn. Testing and diagnosing high voltage air conditioning compressor malfunctions, diagnosing system problems. This is where we're going to catch those hybrid supporting systems and ask you questions about that during the test. We also have content in here about brake system performance problem and having to differentiate between problems caused by the base hydraulic brake system and the regenerative system malfunctions, and determining what remedies or what solutions we have to come up with a repair. So the idea here is really to use the task list and the certification test reference document really as a benchmark for your own individual knowledge of the overall test content and how you feel about your knowledge of the test content, because you yourself are the best judge to find out what you know and don't know about the test content. What ASE can do is give you a tool in your hand to identify that test content, to do your evaluation, so that hopefully you'll be able to hone your study time to skills that are very specific to meet your needs, and then find good study material to get you there. So use the task list as a benchmark, and that's really going to be key, and I'll reinforce that here in just a little bit. Now, since this is an advanced level test, we really had to consider whether there should be a prerequisite requirement as we have with the L1 and L2 advanced level tests, and if so, what prerequisites would be appropriate. Now, in consideration for this decision, ASE staff that facilitated these meetings with these subject matter experts, we directed them to consider what other tests in the automobile technician series would include skills that are fundamental to the skills identified in the new L3 task list. Okay, what is the diagnosis and repair 101 tests that would be the prerequisite to get you to the next level to take the advanced level test. So with this level of clarity, the overwhelming consensus was to require both the A6 Automobile Electrical Electronic Systems test as well as the A8 Engine Performance test, both of these obviously from the Automobile Technician series. So the A6 and the A8 tests are prerequisites. I want to make a point about prerequisite requirements because ASE did just change, we changed our requirements regarding prerequisites. It used to be that your prerequisites, you had to be currently certified, okay? Currently certified, meaning that your A6 and A8 would have to be current in order for you to be able to register and take this L3 test. We've changed our requirements that say now you only have to have been previously certified. What does that mean? That means that your A6 and or A8 can be expired, and we will still allow you to register and take the L3 test without having them current. Of course, we'd like to have you come to the table and renew your certs, but it's not necessary and not required in order for you to take the new L3 test. So I just wanted to make that point of distinction, kind of breaking news. So I've posted that out in forums here of late, and to try to get that message out to technicians so that you understand what's expected of you. Now, as far as the launch of this test, we started offering this test, as I said, for the first time January 1st of this year. Now, you can purchase this test and can schedule your appointment between now and February 28th. Now, if you do, there's an introductory special. The introductory special, if you register, schedule, and take this test between now and February 28th, we're going to give you a $50 discount off the test fee, okay? Now, that only applies to people that take the test between now and February 28th, okay? On March 1st, okay, it's going to be full price, okay? So, and there's not going to be any carryover if you registered and scheduled but you didn't take the test or you didn't schedule your appointment before February 28th. There's not going to be any roll forward. We're going to give refunds, and then you're going to have to re-register and pay full price. So, register, buy early, and schedule early to make sure you get an appointment, because as I mentioned, it is going to be a 3.5-hour test time to take this introductory test. But we need you to help us validate this new test, and that's the point I really wanted to make. we need the test takers to help us validate the test. And so far, we've gotten a really good response from technicians. We're really happy with the number of technicians that have come to the table and registered and have taken this test already. So we're really excited about that. We're going to have a good sample of technicians to validate our results, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. The important thing to understand is there's not going to be any blackout. After the pilot that we offer, from January to February 28th, we're going to still offer the test until June, but it's still going to be the 95-question, 3.5-hour version. Okay. Once we get the test validated and are able to go operational, that should happen sometime in early mid-June with a fully operational test. So another important distinction I want to make is that when you take this pilot test, if you come in, between now and February 28th or now and June, you will not get instant results. You will not get your school report handed to you. You will get a notice of completion. Why is that? Well, because we have to validate the results of this test. We have a bunch of test questions out there that are unproven, and we have very strict principles that we follow from a test and measurement standpoint to qualify that the questions that we score you on are clear, concise, accurate, only have one right answer. And that's what you're helping us do by taking this test during the pilot phase, is helping us to validate those results so we can ultimately, from those 95 questions, find the 45 good ones that we can feel good about making a pass-fail decision. And then we're going to bring a group together that's going to actually determine where we're going to set the bar, where we're going to set the pass-fail mark. Okay? And there's a scientific process that we go through to do that. Again, we're adhering to principles prescribed by the test and measurement industry because ASE is considered a high-stakes exam. You're earning a credential, a professional credential, just like bar certification for a doctor or certification for a certified public accountant and other trades. So we follow the same principles that the test and measurement industry prescribes, and this includes bringing a group together to undergo a passing score study to determine where we're going to set the bar. How many questions out of that 45 do you have to answer in order to get a pass? Now, what I do want to tell you is, since we don't give you instant results, well, John, how in the heck am I going to find out if I passed or failed? As soon as we do our validation, our pass score study, and do a whole bunch of behind-the-scenes work, sometime probably for the folks that take the test through February 28th, probably sometime in mid-April, mid to late April, you'll get a notification from us that your test results have been posted to My ASE. And then you'll be able to, go to your My ASE account, pull off your score report, and find out, your pass-fail. And then, of course, at that point, fulfillment will occur for those of you that passed. You'll get your certificate, your credentials in the mail, to follow. So, but I want you to understand, no instant results, a notice of completion, and the reasons why. But you will get test results posted to My ASE with, hopefully only about maybe if you took the test by February 28th, like I said, mid-late April. So hopefully not too long of a delay. So let's talk about some test preparation resources. If you all just bear with me here just a few minutes, we're just about wrapping up. The best resource that I can direct you to is the ASE website. There's a couple of things on the website that you can utilize to help you in your preparation. Okay? The first one is our FAQs. The FAQs, our frequently asked questions, will explain in detail about everything you need to know about the L3 testing program. Now, it's going to restate a lot of things that I've talked about here about what is the certification test reference document, how is that used, how many questions are on the pilot test, when is it going to go operational. All those questions will be answered in the FAQs. So how do you find them? Okay, how you find them is you're going to, up here on the top of our home page, you're going to click on About ASE. Now, once you click on About ASE, you'll be on the About ASE page. You're going to go underneath this blue banner over here on the left side, and underneath this blue banner, you'll see the selection Frequently Asked Questions. So you're going to click on the Frequently Asked Questions, and that'll take you to the FAQs page. And then you'll see of the selection here, we have Light Duty Hybrid Electric Vehicle Specialist Test. And so if you click on those FAQs, you'll see we have 16 FAQs all the way from what is the L3 test to will I receive an insignia if I pass. Okay? So soup to nuts, this will really explain the constructs of this new certification to give you an expectation of how it's going to work for you if you come to attempt to earn this credential. The other resource I want to point out to you is the L3 study guide. The L3 study guide contains general information about the L3 test, the task list, a copy of the certification test reference document, and some other training resources to consider. Let me show you how to find that. So where you find that is you click on Test Preparation and Training. You go underneath the blue banner again, and you're going to go to Study Guides, and you'll click on Study Guides, and that'll open our Study Guides page. Still under the blue banner, you want to go to Download the Guides. Now these are PDF documents, so it'll download a PDF. So once you're on the Download a Free ASE Study Guide page, you want to go down until you find the Advanced Level L3 Light Duty Hybrid Electric Vehicle Test Information. You're going to click on that, and boom, it's going to download your study guide for you. Now you can save this to your, save this to your computer, so you don't have to print it off. It's about 15 pages, so it's not going to burn too much paper if you want to print one out. But just to go through to show you, what's included in this study guide, an introduction, again, talking about, how this test was developed, the prerequisite requirements, which we talked about, the number of questions, and what they're going to represent, who writes the questions. We're going to talk a little bit about those subject matter experts and how that process worked. How do I prepare? We're going to give you a little bit of information there. A good outline again of what I've talked about what is the hybrid electric vehicle certification test reference document. What is it? What is it for? Some tips about what to do before the test. Now this shows that the L3 test, when it goes fully operational, is going to be 55 questions. Now I know you're saying, well, John, you already said it's going to be 45. Remember, in every ASE test we include some questions that are not considered for score. That's how we introduce new material in future tests as technology changes. It's paramount to keep our ASE certification program going. So we do include a handful of non-scored questions that, again, we're proving to make sure that they're valid for making pass-fail decisions before we ever use them to make a pass-fail decision for you trying to earn the credential. Again, and this is the number of questions in the test time is with an asterisk because we talk about the 95 question 3.5-hour pilot test. Results will not be provided at the test center. We say they're available at the close of the spring testing window. We're going to under promise and over deliver. We found a way to be able to probably beat that. The spring testing window really doesn't close until much later than mid-April. So a little bit of tips on what to do at the test center. Again, you should recognize this, a little different format. This is the task list, which we've talked about, the test specification, identifying the content areas and the number of questions, the task list and the skill set that we've already talked about, which you have at your ready to do your self-evaluation to determine what you know and don't know about the test content. A copy of the certification test reference document, again, so that you can become familiar with all the constructs of the types of things that we are going to cover in this test. Everything is in this outline, ladies and gentlemen. This will help you understand exactly what type of content will be on this test and how it's outlined. Again, the 3 pages of certification test reference document, the block diagrams, and the glossary of terms. One of the additional things you'll find in this study guide are some sample questions. Brand new test. Nobody's ever seen a hybrid ASE hybrid electric vehicle test question, so we've given you some examples here to look at to get a taste or a flavor of the type of questions that you might see when you come in and take this test. So there's a good handful of these questions here for your perusal and just to become familiar with its different styles. And then one of the last things I want to point out, we've got an industry training resource selection here. Bunch of companies that offer hybrid electric vehicle training. These aren't in the study guide as any specific endorsement to these companies. They're really provided for your benefit as a means of communication, helping you to find some resources out there so you can reach out to these companies. All we're doing is providing the platform for a handshake, letting you to reach out to these companies, find out more about what they have to offer, and find out if what they offer is going to meet your needs. So we've got some opportunities there for you to reach out to in hopes to connect you with some resources to help you expand your skill set if you find that you need some help when you do your evaluation using the task list. And that's about it for the study guide. So what should we do to get ready for testing? Okay, just kind of as a recap, use the task list as your benchmark. Remember, that's really the best way to look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, what do I know and don't know about the skills that ASE's identified are going to be reflected by questions in the test. The task list is the best first place to start. Familiarize yourself with the certification test reference document. Can't stress that enough. It gives you a good outline of the content that you're going to see in this test. Use the training resources in the study guide as options for skills enhancement. Again, contact those folks, find out if they have anything that'll help you. I'm sure you also have other resources, through your employers and so forth. If you're working on hybrid vehicles, it's really hot right now, and a lot of people are doing a lot of training out there. The one thing I want to stress, though, is you must have a solid knowledge of electronic system principles and high voltage systems and high voltage diagnostic procedures if you hope to be successful passing this test. And obviously not just pass this test, but if you hope to be a successful hybrid electric vehicle technician, diagnosing and repairing the same type of scenarios you're going to see on our test questions should be the same type of scenarios that you're seeing in the shop. Hopefully we've got a one-to-one correlation there with the majority of the questions that you're going to see on our test. So ladies and gentlemen, that pretty much concludes the presentation for this evening. I hope it's been informative. I'm going to kind of open it up here to my panelists to see if there's any. We'll take a little bit of time here for Q&A for anybody that wants to hang out a few more minutes. I know we're running a little bit over and appreciate you hanging in. Panelists, any general questions out there that I might address?
John, this is Don jumping in here real quick. Looks like most of the questions have been answered along the way as well, from Dan and myself and Dave, plus yourself in the presentation. Let's see if we get any last-minute ones coming in here on the screen. Let's see, I think that everything that all the themes that came up, you've pretty well covered here. So again, it's open for any last-minute questions if anyone has anything.
Well, that's great, and I'll just throw out to you, I know we see some people that are still hanging in there. I appreciate you hanging in over time and for your interest in this new test and for your support of ASE. If you have any questions that come up after the fact, go to our ASE website. We have a Contact Us link. It goes to ASE Customer Service. If you're asking any, kind of a question that isn't generic enough for our customer service folks to answer for you, they pass them down here, and one of our myself or one of our technical specialists down here in the test development department will give you a personal reply. So, we're here to support and serve you. We appreciate your support of ASE certification, and we're really excited about this test, and we're glad you are too by taking the time to join us tonight for this presentation. I hope it proves to be beneficial to you in your test preparation efforts as well as your professional efforts in being better technicians overall. So thanks again to everybody, and hope you have a safe evening. We're heading out into the sleet to drive home, so there's a whole bunch of folks up in the Northeast that are worse off than we are. But safe travels to everyone, and we'll catch you on our next webinar. Thanks for joining us.